Okay, guys, so today we're gonna talk about the second topic, goals, plans, action model. And this model will serve as a foundation for all the topics we're gonna discuss this term. So if you still remember when I was introducing this course to you guys, I said that I'm gonna structure this course around goals. So basically, this course, or from my perspective, interpersonal communication is a goal-driven activity. So all the meanings, all the messages we deliver are all motivated by goals. So today we're going to talk about this goals, plans, action model. And this model, again, is a foundation for all the later topics. Let's talk about this model. And I can promise you guys that all these daily conversations, all the interpersonal communication is directed or is guided by this goals, plans, action model. But before digging into this theory, let's talk about the context of this theory and some key assumptions. So I just said that all our daily conversations happen in the context of interpersonal communication. So last class, we talked about what is communication, how to define communication in general. But let's talk about what is interpersonal communication. Your textbook gives you a very comprehensive and accurate definition, but let's put it into a simple way. The interpersonal communication is defined as the exchange of symbols between two or more people to achieve interpersonal goals. I want to highlight the last two words, the interpersonal goals. And these two words imply three key features of interpersonal communication and separate this interpersonal communication from other types of communication, like mass communication, intrapersonal communication, etc. So first, interpersonal, it means that this conversation happens between two or more people. It's static. So let's say if I do a self-reflection, say I'm keeping a journal to myself. This is intrapersonal communication. INTRAPERSONAL, intrapersonal instead of interpersonal, because it happens just within oneself. Whereas interpersonal communication got to happen between at least two people. The second feature is interpersonal communication has to be transactional instead of linear. In last class, we talked about a linear communication model. It happens in a one-way direction, right? So the message sender is always sending out the symbols, the messages, whereas the message receiver always receives this message. But interpersonal communication is not linear, it's not a one-way direction. Instead, it is transactional, which means that these two people are communicating or contributing to this conversation in an equal way. Let's say if I do a public speech and I'm the only one doing the talk. Say I'm kind of talking to the public through radio, through television. So in this case, it is not an interpersonal communication because it is one-way direction and it is linear communication. There is no way for me to get immediate feedback from my audience from the other side of the radio or the television. And last feature, interpersonal communication is goal-directed instead of being random. And this last feature is the most important one. All interpersonal communication is goal-directed, is goal-motivated. Say you talk with the store cashier, it is because you want to buy a cup of coffee, and you talk with your professor, probably you want to have an extension for your homework, or you want to get one of your questions resolved. So let's say even though after 1 day's hard work and study, you talk with your roommate for no reason. So it seems that there is no such not a salient or outstanding goal in your mind. But actually this conversation, this behavior is still goal-directed. Probably you want to catch up with your roommate, you want to maintain this relationship. So these are the three key features of interpersonal communication, as well as the definition of interpersonal communication. I hope it is clear. So let's talk about this model. This goals, plans, action model was proposed by a really well-known communication scholar, Dr. James Dillard. And he argues that message production is a process in which goals lead to plans, and the plan then in turn leads to actions. So the idea here is very basic. When you are getting ready to communicate with someone, no matter how small it is, you always have a goal in your mind. However, goals do not directly translate it into actions. Goals are instantiated by plans. And then the plans will turn into actions as they're implemented. So basically, the message production can be modeled as a sequence involve three components: goals, plans, and actions. So let's go back to the example we worked in our first lecture. Say you want to throw a party and invite people to come over and have fun with you. And then you need to think about plans, who you want to invite, and through what media you're going to send out the invitations. And your plan could be really specific, such as word choice, how to write or how to craft the invitation, how to structure the sentences. And then when you begin to make calls or tag your friends on Instagram or Facebook, you move to the last phase of this model, which is action. Okay, so this is the basic idea of the big picture of this model. But before we dive into these three components, I'm gonna ask you guys to do the second journal entry. So let's say, imagine you are going to ask one of your friends to go out on a date with you. And to this friend, you have a long and strong crush on him or her for such a long time. So today you are going to ask this friend to go out on a date. So I'm going to ask you guys to plot a conversation in your mind to make this date happen. So when you think about this conversation, please think it in details. What kind of things would you say? How are you going to make this date happen? What's the context of this conversation? Say, are you going to talk with your friend face to face, or are you going to kind of call him or her? And would you prefer to make this conversation happen in a public space or in a more private setting, etc.? So think about this conversation in details. And when you have this conversation, you have your plan in your mind, please write this conversation down as your second journal entry and also describe your plan. So you can pause here and kind of finish this journal entry and then come back to our lecture. We're going to make use of your journal entry for later class. So because message production processes are believed to be guided by the goals of the communicators. So the knowledge of the nature of goals and how goals are transferred into actions is pretty essential to our understanding of message production. But first of all, what are goals? Let's define goals. James Dillard defined goal as the future states of affairs which an individual desires to attain or to maintain. So we often hear people talking about different types of goals: academic goals, career goals, or life goals. Those goals are apparently something dealing with the future states. But let's think about this future term in its broadest sense. So technically, the future can range from next minute to tomorrow to 20 years from right now. So for example, if I'm feeling a little bit thirsty right now, I'll reach out to my water bottle to drink some water. So now I have a goal in my mind, which is I want to drink some water, or if we want to talk about it at a more abstract level, I want to maintain the water balance in my body. But when our desired end states have to be achieved through some communication, through some coordination with other people, we have a communication goal here. Let's say today I am outside and I want to drink some water, but I forgot my wallet. So to achieve this goal of drinking some water, I got to talk with my friend, and probably I want to borrow some money from him or her to buy a bottle of water to maintain the water balance in my body. So in this situation, I have a goal, and to be more specific, I have a communication goal, because to achieve this goal, I got to coordinate or talk or communicate with someone else to achieve this goal. And this brings me the first feature of communication goal, which is it requires communication with other people. The second feature of communication goals is they are cognitive in nature. So although these communication goals are accomplished through interactions or communication, they are cognitive in nature. And they are the mental representations of some end state you want to achieve. So we can say that these communication goals, they are cognitive in nature instead of behavioral. So when it comes to others' goals, because they are cognitive in nature, what we can do is to infer others' goals instead of directly observing them. Let me give you one example. Let's say you are waiting for the bus or for the metro, and a guy who is also in the waiting line approaches you and asks you, "Excuse me, do you have the time?" So it seems that the goal underlying this question is quite obvious, right? He wants to find out the time. Well, this may be true, may not be true. You got to watch what he does next. It's possible that he's just using this as an opening line to strike up a conversation with you. So for this situation, probably he's just using finding out the time as a cover for his real goal. Or probably he wants to achieve multiple goals through this one behavior, finding out the time, plus opening up a conversation with you. So we can say that goals are cognitive in nature. We cannot directly observe them. What we can do is to infer others' goals. It could be right, it could be totally off. And the goals motivate and explain behaviors, but goals are not behaviors themselves. And in the scenario I just described to you guys, I mentioned sometimes people can have multiple goals ongoing at the same time. For example, this guy may want to find out the time plus strike up a conversation with you. So this is the last feature of communication goals. We often have multiple goals operating at the same time. So these are the three features of communication goals and the definition of goals. So next, I want to talk about a different perspective to look at the last proposition. We often have multiple goals operating simultaneously. It's called primary and secondary goals. I'll explain these two terms in next video.